Here is a map of the largest oil spills affecting U.S. waters since 1969. Each dot on this map isn't just a statistic. They represent some of the largest environmental disasters in U.S. history. Oil spills have happened off every coastline in the United States. Just like the scars these spills leave on the seafloors, coastlines, and communities they devastate, the images of oil-covered animals and beaches stay with us. History shows that where we drill, we spill. Any spill, no matter the size, has consequences for the ocean. In this video, we're taking a look at 5 of the worst oil spills in U.S. history. On January 28, 1969, a drilling rig off the coast of Santa Barbara, California, experienced a blowout, spilling more than 3.2 million gallons of crude oil into the surrounding waters over the course of the next 10 days. The spreading toxic oil slick quickly devastated marine life in the area, poisoning porpoises, seals, whales, birds, and fish. Nearly 3,700 seabirds, which have vital nesting habitats in the Santa Barbara Channel, were killed by the spill. Despite containment efforts, oil from the spill washed ashore in Santa Barbara and traveled as far north as Pismo Beach and as far south as Mexico. But in the wake of this tragedy, people came together to fight for change. As images of the disaster were shown on TV and publicized across the news, the Santa Barbara oil spill really catalyzed the nation's concern. A year later, the first ever Earth Day was celebrated. Many of the environmental safeguards that are still in place to this day were enacted in the years that followed. But despite this progress, offshore drilling continued, and worse spills followed suit. About 20 years later, in the icy waters of Prince William Sound off the Gulf of Alaska, an even worse catastrophe struck. On March 23, 1989, an oil tanker called Exxon Valdez left port in the dark of night on its way to California. It never made it. Just after midnight, this massive ship ran into a reef, spilling 11 million gallons of oil into surrounding waters. If you thought the wildlife impacts of the Santa Barbara oil spill were bad, just look at this. Here are the numbers of seabirds, sea otters, harbor seals, and bald eagles that were killed by the Exxon Valdez spill. Orcas from the Chugach transient population never recovered from the spill and remain at risk of extinction to this day. It's important to remember that spilled oil doesn't just harm marine life by coating their bodies. The toxic compounds found in oil can disrupt animal reproductive systems, suppress immune systems, and cause cancer. And these impacts can persist for months, years, even decades after a spill. The human costs of this disaster are also massive. The once thriving herring fishery in Prince William Sound completely collapsed, and Alaska's tourism industry was devastated, causing many to lose their livelihoods. On top of all this, 4 people died in the effort to clean up the spill, and thousands of cleanup workers were exposed to toxic chemicals. The toll on affected communities was enormous. A 24-year-long study found the impacts included collective trauma, social disruption, loss of social capital, and psychological stress. 37 years later, oil still lingers in Prince William Sound and throughout the Gulf of Alaska, impacting people and wildlife. It's unlikely that all of the remaining oil will degrade. So what can we learn from the Exxon Valdez oil spill? For one, it's a reminder that oil pollutes the environment at every phase of the process, including transportation. It's also a harsh lesson that the toll of drilling and spilling is devastating to wildlife, human health, and coastal communities. And some of the damage lasts forever. You would hope that after spills like those, the country would take action to make sure it never happens again. But because offshore drilling continued, so did the spills, and the next one became the largest in U.S. history. On the evening of April 20th, 2010, work was proceeding as usual on a BP oil rig off the coast of Louisiana called Deepwater Horizon. All of a sudden, a surge of high-pressure gas broke through the faulty seal at the base of the oil well and traveled up to the rig, causing a massive explosion. 11 crew members were tragically killed, and violent flames engulfed this giant structure in the middle of the ocean. Over the next 87 days, oil gushed out from the well, ultimately spewing 134 million gallons into the Gulf of Mexico. Toxic sludge washed up on thousands of miles of shoreline from Texas to Florida. Just like in previous oil spills, wildlife paid a devastating price, especially marine mammals like dolphins and whales that saw major population declines. Because of the impact on fish and shellfish, demand for Gulf seafood plummeted in the aftermath of the oil spill, leading to the loss of more than 25,000 jobs and $2.3 billion in economic activity over the following decade. The human health effects of the Deepwater Horizon disaster became the most studied of any oil spill. After thousands of phone interviews and home visits, researchers concluded that the health impacts of the spill on cleanup workers and volunteers were severe and far-reaching, including increased cases of asthma, heart attacks, skin conditions, and immune-related illnesses. The Deepwater Horizon oil spill fundamentally altered the Gulf of Mexico. Many parts of the ecosystem will take decades to recover, if at all, and still, offshore drilling continues. On May 19, 2015, a pipeline in Santa Barbara County servicing offshore oil platforms ruptured due to corrosion, spewing more than 120,000 gallons of crude oil. Much of the oil ran across the nearby Refugio Beach and into the ocean. The Refugio spill, as it has come to be known, affected thousands of acres of shoreline and underwater habitat. It closed fisheries and coated animals in oil, including sea lions, dolphins, lobsters, and 28 species of birds, resulting in hundreds of animal deaths. Beaches were contaminated for miles, with balls of black tar washing ashore as far south as Los Angeles. While volunteers came together to help rescue wildlife and clean beaches, the damage couldn't be undone. And the bad news doesn't end there. In March of 2026, the very same pipeline that caused the Refugio spill was put back into operation for the first time in more than a decade. The Trump administration ordered its restart, violating court orders and California state laws and safeguards designed to prevent another spill. The required repairs for this decades-old pipeline haven't even been completed, and it's already back to threatening California's coastlines once again. Lastly, we have the most recent severe oil spill in the US, and one that began as a mystery. On October 3, 2021, a thick black sheen of oil stretching nearly 6 nautical miles was observed in the waters of Huntington Beach, California. At first, nobody knew what had caused this oil spill. It wasn't until a joint investigation by multiple federal agencies that the picture became clear. During a severe thunderstorm, cargo ships in the area were forced to drop anchor, and the force of the storm caused some anchors to move and hit the pipeline, which cracked open and released the oil. Nearly 25,000 gallons of oil leaked over 4 miles offshore, leading to beach closures and tremendous harm to wildlife. The spill caused widespread ecological damage, impacting 13 marine protected areas, closing fisheries, oiling thousands of acres of habitat, and hundreds of animals. More than 1,800 personnel were mobilized to address the damage. Although the company that operated the pipeline was charged with negligence for failing to respond fast enough to the spill and forced to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in penalties, no fine can ever undo the impact to the environment and wildlife. Those were 5 of the most devastating oil spills in US history, and there are so many more we didn't talk about. Between 2010 and 2022, more than 7,300 oil spills occurred in US waters, an average of over 1 spill every day. But despite this, the Trump administration is looking to expand offshore drilling off our country's precious coasts. Such an expansion would be an oil spill nightmare waiting to happen. The only way to end this pattern is to stop the expansion of offshore drilling, and that's exactly what Oceana is campaigning to do. Over the past 20 years, we've achieved key bipartisan victories across US coasts to prevent more offshore drilling, protecting vulnerable wildlife, and standing up for communities that depend on clean oceans. We've won in the past and will continue to win in the future, because protecting our coasts from dangerous oil spills is something we can all agree on. Learn more about our efforts and how you can get involved at the link in the description.